I think this event was long overdue. I'm just speaking for myself, but I think my remarks speak to a lot of students, a lot of colleagues, a lot of comrades that have interacted with you, Profe. I think particularly within the Department of Ethnic Studies at Cal, Carlos has played such an important role as a mentor, especially for students who turn to ethnic studies, because we had political commitments to our community. And we really wanted to link what we're learning in the classroom to the community. Profe offered us a model for that in terms of, I think, his teaching, his research, also just his general mentorship. I remember anyone who was around here in 2011 remembers Operation Excellence, huge austerity measures that did a lot of harm, put it that way. I guess I'm being recorded, so I should probably be careful. But I remember, even though Profe was retired, he was out there with us, showing solidarity to students, and that's really what he was about. And I think one thing that really Profe held, I think, for a lot of us, was he preserved the collective memory of struggle in the department, right? In terms of our department's deep roots to so many of the classes were called community studies because the idea is you would be in the community, right? So I think for those of us in the department that wanted that turned to ethnic studies because of that, Profe preserved that for us and offered a model of what that looks like, right? And I think, more than anything, if you haven't taken a look at the exhibit, please do. In terms of, I think the exhibit was, we'll talk a little bit about it a little bit later, but the exhibit really was an attempt to really engage deeply with Profe's practice, as an educator, as a researcher, and as a grassroots organizer, right? And I think particularly in this moment where we're dealing with a lot, I'm speaking from a position of being a professor at the CSUs. We're dealing with tuition hikes for our students. We're dealing with cuts to our classes. We're dealing with, it feels like an extreme version of Operation Excellence. I probably should be more careful with what I say. But, I think in that context, I think it's worth kind of thinking about what does ethnic studies look like in that context when our communities are fighting, right? And I think engaging with Profe's practice gives us a model of what that looks like, right? So to kind of open it up, I want to invite Lillian Castillo-Speed just to say a few words from the Ethnic Studies Library.
Okay. Thank you, Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're all here. If you don't know, the rest of you are over there. That's an important piece of information. Another piece of information. This is a really unusual event in the feeling in this room. The feeling for Carlos, the gratitude, the inspiration that he brings. And we've had a lot of events in the library, but this is really one of a kind. People are still coming in. I'm just overwhelmed by how people just love you, Carlos. And there's that gratitude. And just a real quick note on gratitude, I'm very, very grateful to Carlos. And I've said this in a couple of events, but Carlos was the person who hired me for my first job as a librarian on campus. I will always be grateful for that, Carlos. Thank you so much. So yes, welcome, and please enjoy the rest of the program. It's going to be wonderful.
All right, to open up the space, I want to invite some poets up here. I want to invite Dr. Jonathan Gomez from San Jose State University to do the introduction. So in addition to teaching at SJSU's Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies, Dr. Gomez coordinates a San Jose Culture Counts reading series. So the Culture Counts reading series is a transformative pedagogy project that convenes on a bi-weekly basis in San Jose. It's facilitated via testimonial story circle pedagogy that encourages each participant to utilize poetry. They read as a launching pad to speak and write poems about their own life experiences, their imaginaries, and social justice needs. So Poets from Culture Count reading series will open up the space for us. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jonathan Gomez.
All right, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thanks to Mike for connecting me with the wonderful people here at the Ethnic Studies Library. I met Mike when I was a graduate student here at Cal on a fellowship in the Ethnic Studies department, and he just introduced me to a wonderful world of graduate students who were really trying to utilize their education for liberation, right? And I think a lot of us are in the struggle today. But quickly about Profe, I met Profe for the first time when I was an undergrad at UC Santa Cruz as part of the Black and Brown Roundtable. And my mentor, Dr. Paul Ortiz, brought you over. But I first read your scholarship in the class of one of my other mentors, Dr. Larry Trujillo. And so it's just an honor to be here. As part of today, right, we came from San Jose with a group of poets and cultural workers from the community to facilitate a practice, right? And I'm going to read a little bit. And so I should say that the Culture Counts reading series emerged because one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Chicano mural in San Jose was whitewashed in 2018. And students came together and were furious, disrespected that mural de la raza was painted over. And they told me, Dr. Gomez, it's like our culture doesn't count, right? And so I wanted to register their hurt, but I also wanted to invert and say, of course, our culture counts. So we created, this space where we can study the different cultural histories of the participants that take part, and think about how we can mobilize our culture in the community for social change, right? And the Culture Counts reading series emerges out of, in my training, work that I conducted at UC Santa Barbara Center for Black Studies Research with my mentors, Dr. Diane Fugino and Dr. George Lipsitz. And so we have here as part of our acuerdos that we come together, it says, in a society that is structured in dominance, it can be difficult to respectfully work with others, to think in terms of the caring we instead of the hyper-individualized me. Yet the production of poetry and community and collaborative struggles for social justice operate on the assumption that as a collective, we possess a greater knowledge base and capacity for creative action than any one of us can achieve alone. And so this evening, you're going to hear some poetry from some of the students that participated in the writing workshop today. So they wrote what they're sharing, they wrote at our workshop. And so for our first poet, it's really great to introduce you to a first year, or they're a transfer student transferring from San Jose City College, Sinai Martinez. So please, Sinai, come up.
Hi, so my name is Sinai. I am my first year here, third year junior transfer. I'm from Eastside San Jose, California. And so as Profe was saying, we were reading a poem called The Calling by Luis Rodriguez. And it really inspired me to write this poem. It was like in 6 minutes, so it's like 6 minute poem I wrote. We were timed. But I feel like the part from The Calling, the poem, that really got me wanting to write my poem was this part. It says, it called me to war, to be a writer, to be a scientist, and march with the soldiers of change. And Profe asked us a question. He was like, when you go march with the soldiers of change, where do they take you? And I reflected a lot in those 6 minutes. And I wrote it in 3 minutes, actually. But this is the poem I wrote. I put, marching with the soldiers of change, the doctorados, the abogados, the profes, and the raza. It ignites and says of poder, a sense of unidad. We get called into the war of resisting oppression, a calling, changing those Eurocentric ideas into ideas of revolution, marching with the soldiers of change, marching towards a revolution, a world free of discrimination, prejudice, and racism, marching towards unity. That's the poem I wrote, and I don't know, it really, I was kind of proud of myself. I'd never written that fast.
All right, another participant who wrote a poem, Archit Maheo. He's a student at San Jose State and a member of the Culture Counts reading series. And he joined us today, and so he's going to share his poem with us.
Is this microphone working?
It's not on.
Okay. So it's not working. It's okay.
You can turn it on though. Let me help.
Okay. I think it'd be
Let's
good
see.
going
Great.
forward.
That's
Yeah.
what it's for. There you go. Try it out now.
Hello? Hey. Yeah, it's good.
Is it working?
Is it? Hello? Hello?
Hey,
Yeah?
there you go.
What a voice.
I hope so. Wow, I'm definitely not nervous. Hello, my name is Archit Mahale. I'm 22 years old. I was born down in Riverside, California, which, very cool. I identify as South Asian Indian. My parents immigrated here from the west side of India in a small town called Nashik, which is a part of the larger state called Maharashtra, in I think 1997 or 98. But I was born down in Riverside. I am a history major at San Jose State University, triple minoring in American Studies, African American Studies, and Chicano Studies. I consider myself a historian, a tutor, a photographer, and at times an anarchist. But I also consider myself a guitarist. So I play a lot of music that was created well before I was born, which is not a bad thing. But I'm a product of my environment, as all of us are. As all of us study ethnic studies, we all know that to be very true. I would not be here without my community, so that includes Profe Gomez, the rest of Culture Counts reading series, my mom, my dad, and my sister. And at San Jose State, I'm taking a class called Chicano Families, right? And our professor, Dr. Cruz, she's like, Archit, what are some women you have in your family, right? And I said, well, I have my older sister, she's pursuing a PhD in clinical neuropsychology, and I have my strong mom, right? And she went, wow, beautiful, you have some strong mujeres in your life, right? And obviously, me being Indian, I still knew that mujeres means women, but I had never seen my own sister and my mom through a mujeres lens, When I think of mujeres, I think of the hearts of steel, powerful, and I had never really seen my mom or my sister like that, especially in India where women are treated so poorly, and they're definitely victims of patriarchy. So I wanted to share a little bit of stuff, but before I do that, I wanted to thank, again, Profe Gomez, Culture Counts, my roommates, the Culture Counts reading series, Gloria Anzaldúa, and Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. But so I'd like to read a poem that I wrote a little while ago, but actually, I didn't read that a while ago. I wrote this earlier today. So the poem we were using was the same one the previous student spoke about. And the prompt was, when you march with the soldiers of change, what does it look like? Or where do they take you? But I interpreted it as, what does it look like? Anyways, when I march with the soldiers of change, I feel it in my bones. I feel my blood rushing to my fingertips, and I feel my limbs twitching like I did weed for the first time. I feel the perfect pair of thick socks inside my raggedy-ass pair of shoes that have walked for years. I feel the warmth of my usual hoodie, perfect for any weather, ranging from, damn, it's cold, to my mom saying, seeing you and that makes me nauseous. I feel my tight joggers in case I need to make a run for it. I feel like those cheesy kids in those cheesy movies with cheesy families coming home an outlaw, a fugitive, a criminal, guilty of dreaming of liberation. I feel like a kid who just wants to get homework over with so I can play. In the same way, I just want to punch a cop, preventing me from dreaming. Playing, dreaming, doesn't matter where, it's the same to me. Thank you.
All right, so next we have Serafin Andrade, and they're also a first year here at Cal, transfer student, and they'll read the poem that they wrote during the workshop as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Serafina Andrade. I'm formerly incarcerated. I'm a first generation, third-year transfer for San Jose City College as well. And I always feel self-conscious for others to hear my thoughts, especially in writings. I don't know, it's a little hard to be able to share, but I really like poetry. I enjoy it. I enjoy writing as well, although I'm very self-critical that I'm not the best. But, you know, after reading The Calling from Luis Rodriguez, the Profe asked us, you know, a prime question of when you march with the soldiers of change, where do they take you? And what I wrote was, soldiers of change march you into the battlefields of trauma, despair, and fear. I was led into the abyss of self-reflection of who I really was and didn't want to be. Soldiers of change are courageous because war with yourself is the hardest thing, especially once I realized underneath those masks, we are all the same. While thinking I was hurting you, I was only hurting me. Soldiers of change helped me see the first battle was within me.
Thank you. Next, we have Alberto Camacho, who he's a high school educator at Silver Creek High School and the director of a new project that just launched this academic year called Healing Youth Justice Plática and Poetry Series. He works a lot with young people who oftentimes go demonized, disrespected, yet he's someone that challenges the ways in which other educators and other administrators try to push out these students. And it's an honor to co-facilitate this space with Alberto. Thank you.
Buenas noches. My name is Alberto Camacho from Eastside San Jose. Grew up on McKee and White. I teach English with a firme Chicano twist. And every time I'm in spaces like these, it's like I'm taken back to what I like to consider like the golden years of Chicanismo. And obviously, like every generation has like the highs and the lows, but I really respect, and I was brought up by like old school Chicanos in the neighborhood, and like my landlord is an old school Chicano, and they just kicked down a lot of games. So it's an honor to be here with y'all on Kick Palabra, and it's a really, it's like a bigger honor to be with one of the godfathers of Chicanismo. So I'm really grateful and, you know, honored to be down with y'all. And the poem I wrote is a poem that's like, it's always in developing. Corky Gonzalez was one of my first introductions to Chicanismo in the professional, like in the school setting, I guess, in the university setting. So I kind of took his I am Joaquin and I made it Eastside Stilo. So I am Alberto. So here we go. Yo soy Alberto. I am Alberto. Enredado en la batalla dentro de mi mente. I know, yo sé, debería ser referente. Sun-kissed by Huitzilopochtli. Han pasado 50 años, and it's still us versus them. Todavía we wonder when. When will we listen? I myself am caught up between the paradox de la victoria del espíritu, or to live a false American dream. Un sueño que mis jefitos still wish to see. I am Alberto, hijo de un tarasco por mi padre, descendiente de una española por mi madre, enraged to be mestizo, dentro de mí sangre del conquistador. Qué rabia, qué traición, qué ardor. I am Alberto, rechazo a Dios sin conocer mis raíces, odio el español sin conocer el náhuatl, torn between three identities, mexicano, chicano, americano. ¿Qué hago? Who am I? Yo soy la mujer, invalidada por nuestra sociedad corrupta, told to keep quiet, to loosen up. When will this stop? Destruimos a nuestras reinas. How do they not hate us? Yo soy el negro, walking down the street with a hoodie, a pocket full of Skittles and a can of iced tea, a man getting ready for the new year on the train, with only blood to remember their name. The women arrested for a traffic ticket, only to be found murdered. We are not misfits. January 20th, 2017, A day I grew to hate, down to my core. This country's news are eyesores. This is reality. Yo no voy a ser a casualty. We finally opened our eyes. This country has gone on to rot. We'd never thought we'd regress after all the progress. Esta tierra es de nosotros, gritan los gabachos. No, this land is ours, les contestamos. Yo soy el migrante, buscando un futuro, trabajando duro, humilde. Send them to the field, grita el gabacho. Trump calling us some bad muchachos. Little does he know we're the heart of this land. Cultivamos la tierra, sin nosotros no hay progreso. Illegals, aliens, drug traffickers, criminals. Criminales ustedes, perdieron 1,500 angelitos. Mataron a nuestra hermana guatemalteca. Don't even think about she could have come in legally. You have no idea what these people go through in their daily. Yo soy mexicano, salvadoreño, guatemalteco, hondureño, nicaragüense, costarricense, argentino, panameño, palestino. Yo soy Alberto, hijo de Aslan, mexicano, chicano, el campesino, brown beret, dreamer, fighter, educador, with the idea of empowering youth, recordarles de nuestro pasado, enseñarles que somos reyes y reinas, gente poderosa. Nuestros ancestros set the foundation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for allowing us to share some space with you, some palabra. I think that we mentioned that we utilize the poetry of Luis Rodriguez, and one thing that he says that we try to follow and practice is that oftentimes we think that poets are special kinds of people, but in fact every person is a special kind of poet, right? And the production of poetry and community materializes a vision of a world where every person is recognized and respected as someone whose life has value, where marginalized people give voice to their assets, needs, and imaginaries, and the excluded are invited to the circle and fully embraced. Thank you.
All right, we got a special guest.
All right, y'all. So, in terms of, I just want to speak a little bit about the exhibit. In terms of, it was really like a collective process. At first and foremost, it was an attempt to really engage deeply with Profe scholarship, right? So there's three, I'm sorry, I'm kind of winded of like what's happening. But there were three texts that we really tried to sit with and engage with. One is Barrio as an Internal Colony, co-written with Mario Barrera, Charles Ornelas, and really wanted to kind of, similar to the late Robert Allen, right? In terms of, we really wanted to sit with a political analysis that guided a lot of Profe's work in terms of thinking about internal colonialism, right? And particularly in the piece, thinking through the ways in which they thought about internal colonialism as a way that kind of names the type of political disenfranchisement within Chicano communities, but also communities of color writ large. Another piece we engaged with was a 1974 article. I remember you signed it in one of our grad seminars. It was called The Politics of Protest and Chicano Liberation, a case study of repression and cooptation, right? So in terms of, it sat with a case study of the East LA blowouts, particularly kind of, Profe was involved as a supporter, but, it's really kind of tried to think through questions of cooptation and political repression, but also there were really kind of deep analysis of schooling, right? In terms of, I just have a quote from here that we really sat with. The most important political institution of the state is a schooling system. Historically, schools have been the most effective tool of ideological repression. It is, quote unquote, the learning process where the manipulation of young people's minds take place, right? So in terms of, those were really things, in terms of thinking through, Profe's work as a scholar, but also as an educator. We really wanted to sit with that. And then the last piece was probably his most well-known piece, seminal text, studying the Chicano movement, youth identity, power, right? So after this, please take some time to look through the exhibit. We organized it around 3 themes, one being the Chicano movement, 2 being third world solidarity, particularly focusing on Central American solidarity, but also just wanted to lift up and name the fact that Profe was also deeply involved in anti-apartheid struggles, right? But and the third text was, or the third theme was the political possibilities of ethnic studies, right? I think my favorite part of the exhibit is all the thank you letters. Just really spoke to, the way you walk with students. But also sorry, I'm getting tired. I guess kind of the last thing I want to say, this really was a collective process. And a lot of the heavy lifting of this work in terms of really started last January. We had 3 undergraduate students from CSU East Bay that did a lot, pretty much like, the librarians here can attest to it every week going through the archives, right? And I think part of this project was to get folks to really engage deeply with Profe's archives, right? So with that said, I want to open up the space to the students that really did the hard work. So Adriana, Marissa, and Maria, you come up.
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa. Being granted the opportunity to research and explore the Carlos Muñoz Jr. Archive by Dr. Mike and Sina has been an experience that will live within my lifetime for forever. The physicality of being able to visit and interact with an in-person archive for the first time showed me how fundamental it is to document history in its making, no matter how minute the detail. It has been an honor to collaborate with Dr. Mike, whom I view as a mentor and the one who radicalized the way I view our world. He has shown up for us no matter how chaotic and heavy this past year has become. I cherish and miss the long discussions between my colleagues Adrian, Maria, and I after our weekly visits to the Ethnic Studies Library. Even when we braved an absolute downpour of rain back to the BART station on a day none of us double-checked the weather. The documents, letters, artwork, and pamphlets that Muñoz kept guided us to make connections across cartons and across movements. The love Muñoz had for every corner of his community and their efforts to not only revitalize their Chicano identity, but the world around them is evident within his archive. It was incredibly powerful to me to learn about such an integral part of the history of protest and grassroots activism, and then to put this knowledge into the context of our current fight for the liberation of all oppressed peoples. To learn about everyday radicalized Chicanos come together and move forward together inspires me to embody their fervor. For nearly a year, we have witnessed university students across the country and the world engage in protests through encampments, occupations, and marches for a liberated Palestine. Now more than ever, we must continue the resistance and protest work of activists who came before us. As a callback to Muñoz's ethics of intersectionality, we are not free until all of us are free. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adriana, and I would, the opportunity to work alongside my friends Maria and Marissa, as well as with Dr. Mike and Sina, means more to me than I can express. As an undergraduate historian, being asked to research such meaningful and impactful archival materials is something I didn't think was possible before this project. It is especially significant to work with the archives of someone who inspired countless students and played a vital role in both the Chicano movement and broader social movements. Every newspaper, pamphlet, piece of art, or poster that Muñoz kept was a direct reflection of the events and ideologies that were important to both to him and to the history of the Chicano movement. and they became equally important to all of us very quickly as we looked forward to our Fridays and Saturdays when we would all BART to the library and read a new piece of literature, uncover a theme we hadn't seen before in the archive, or learn about a piece of history that would have us nerding out for the next week. Muñoz's ability to mobilize his students to think critically about their histories and challenge the dominant narratives perpetuated in academia was evident. He was deeply committed to his students and recognized the importance of their understanding of both their personal histories and the broader narratives of their communities. Learning about what Chicano liberation and joy looked like, international solidarity, student activism, and social movements were all elements of his teaching that resonated with me. And before I end, I would like to say free Palestine, free Congo, free Lebanon, free Sudan, and free all oppressed peoples who have suffered at the hands of apartheid, colonization, and genocide. Thank you.
I can lower this kind of short. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maria Garcia Flores. As a Mexican-American woman who was chosen as a research assistant alongside my colleagues and friends, Adrian and Marissa, I am extremely grateful to Dr. Mike Encina for offering me the opportunity to work and expand my knowledge in a field that I resonate with and consider one of my niches. Researching the Carlos Muñoz Jr. archives revealed a variety of concepts. His take on the intersectionality of third world issues and the United States moved me, as I was unaware of how involved the United States was with Latin America and Central America, specifically the Salvadoran and Guatemalan civil wars causing detrimental side effects such as malnutrition, which American minorities also faced. Additionally, I related to the concept of third world students who felt isolated from their education as it focused on a Eurocentric perspective. Muñoz served as a pivotal figure with solidarity. He not only centered the Chicano community, but all minority groups, which further impacted my advocacy for third world issues and my radicalism. Therefore, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Palestinian genocide and genocides occurring in other countries like Sudan, Congo, Syria, and all other oppressed countries. Buenas tardes a todos, me llamo María García Flores y como una mujer mexicana-americana que le ofrecieron una posición de asistente de investigación junto a mis amigos y colegas Adriana y Marisa, soy extremadamente afortunada y agradecida al Dr. Mike Encina por ofrecerme la oportunidad de trabajar y expandir mi conocimiento en una área de estudio que yo me identifico con y considero una de mis nichos. Investigando el archivo de Carlos Muñoz Jr. reveló variedades de conceptos. Su erudición en la interseccionalidad de los problemas del tercer mundo y los Estados Unidos me conmovió, porque no sabía que los Estados Unidos estaba tan involucrado en Latinoamérica y Centroamérica. Específicamente estaban involucrados en las guerras civiles de El Salvador y Guatemala, causando defectos secundarios prejudiciales que también afectan a las comunidades de color en los Estados Unidos, como la malnutrición. Adicionalmente, yo resoné con el concepto del estudiante del tercer mundo. Son estudiantes que se sienten aislados en su educación debido a que se enfocan en la perspectiva eurocéntrica o la perspectiva blanca. Carlos Muñoz es un ejemplo en la solidaridad. Él no solo se fijó en la comunidad chicana, pero todas las comunidades de color. Esto me ha impactado y me ha dado defensa sobre los problemas del tercer mundo. Y mi radicalismo, por eso quiero tomar un momento para reconocer el genocidio de Palestina y los otros genocidios de países como Sudán, Congo, Tigray y Siria, y todos los países que también están pasando por eso.
See, they explained it way better than I could have. So we want to move into the portion of the event where we have former students, former colleagues, and former comrades kind of share just some reflections on Profe. So I want to welcome Dr. Jason Ferreira. Let's give it up. He teaches in the Department of Race and Resistance Studies in the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State. There's one last thing I want to say is I think one thing that Profe modeled is connecting folks, right? In terms of, Jason graduated before I graduated, but I remember my first semester, they're like, you have to talk to this guy. So I'll turn it over to you. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Can y'all hear me? Okay, cool. I just want to say a couple of things before I start. It's amazing how, like I sat down, I have reflections here, but it's amazing how these students who just spent, a semester in your archives, in your papers, have learned these very important things in ways that, they don't even know you, but now they know you. It speaks to the importance of this archive. But not only do they know you, they know something about the Chicano movement, right? The other thing before I jump in, I have to say, I want to apologize. I've had a family emergency. My wife was in the hospital, so I wouldn't be anywhere else right now. I mean, she's out of the hospital. She's here. She's home now. But I share this all as a way of saying my comments might not be as polished as I would have wanted them to be. But there's a lot I want to say. There's a lot I wanted to say. And I'm not going to get emotional like when you retired and I spoke, because I had a lot of time to think about your impact and your role in the world and also in my life. First and foremost, as everybody says, I want to thank Michael. I want to thank the Ethnic Studies Library, not only for this event, but in collecting and preserving Carlos's papers. As my mentor, as my comrade, as my friend, as someone I consider family, I'm deeply appreciative on a personal level for this. As a Chicano, as a male, we're not often encouraged to express ourselves, but I love you.
I love you too.
Me too.
So I love the fact that we're having this event because you deserve your flowers, man. You deserve your flowers. You deserve your this honoring. This is very important because we also so desperately need this collection. As a historian myself, there are other movements like, say, the Black freedom struggle, where the historiography is very, very deep, right? And the Chicano movement the historiography of the Chicano movement is still very, very young. And so this collection will do a lot, I think, to illuminate what we know about the Chicano movement. But I'm also thinking now of, and I see him up there on the wall, my other mentor, who's no longer with us, Professor Ron Takaki, who would oftentimes push us. And if anybody knows Ron, he would always say, we must ask the epistemological question. How do we know what we know, right? And in fact, that's so true, because today, the battles over history are fierce. They're fierce. And I don't just mean that from the perspective of MAGA, right? I mean, we all know what that's about, right? But I think that, that silencing, that simplifying of histories, that distortion of history, but even on our side, all too often there are quick, viral even, analyses which proliferate, which say the Chicano movement was this, not this. A Chicano is this, not that. But that is inherently one thing, monolithic, exclusive, maybe even functionally reactionary. Maybe not in this room, but I'm being honest because I hear it. I've heard it, I've experienced it, where the Chicano movement is exclusive. It doesn't include other people of color. It's anti-Black, it's anti-Indigenous, it's inherently sexist. And I'll even go so far as to say, and maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but that's okay because it's a safe space. I think there's an anti-Chicano current proliferating today, right? But this archive and this memoir remind us that Chicano, Chicana has always been more than one thing. It's always resisted. It's always included an expansive radicalism, capacious in its essence, even as it at the same time grappled with all of the contradictions of society, contradictions that are in here as well as out there. And I'll come back to that perhaps dialectical concept in a moment or at the end. But suffice to say, what I really want to get at here is Carlos is part of a long and deep tradition of revolutionary struggle. And if you've read this memoir, you know exactly what I mean. Which, by the way, you can purchase it over here. It's in books. That's for you, Harvey. My relationship with Carlos, I was supposed to tell stories about our from our experiences. My relationship formally began with Carlos in the early 1990s when I started graduate school here. And I was thinking about it this morning. He's like, okay, yeah, that's when but truthfully, my life was touched by Carlos much earlier than that. I remember, so I'm from the Midwest, I'm from the Chicago area. I remember in the mid-1970s, I don't think I've ever shared this story with you. I remember in the mid-1970s, for those of you who remember when malls were just starting to take off, going to a mall as a young child, right? I was probably 5 years old, 6 years old. We went to a movie. My dad took me to the movies. And right next door to the movies, they used to have these stores where you could buy T-shirts and then they would iron decals on, right? And the store would be full of all these different decals you could get. And my dad bought me a decal that says Super Chicano, right? And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but it sticks with me, and I bring it up here only to say that Carlos touched me in those moments. Because here we are in the Southwest, and I don't know if you know about Chicago, not a very friendly place for Chicanos, had a lot to do in shaping a particular consciousness. That movement, which Carlos was so important to, was having national impact, right? Now, we talk about his scholarship, and I'll mention that in a second, but I guess what I want to say is his contribution changed the nation, and definitely changed this Chicano, right? And this is why I say that it's important for us to recognize the significance of being Chicano, because, if you've never felt the degradation or the shame, or let's say the pain of racism, then you can't understand, you can't appreciate the power of the term Chicano, right? The importance of that pride. But when did I formally? I formally met him in the early 1990s. I came here, and truth be told, while Carlos, I would have never completed my PhD if it wasn't for Carlos, and I have to also say, Dr. Eula Taylor, I would have finished without Eula as well. But I wouldn't have even been here at Berkeley if it wasn't for Carlos. Because in 1992, I got my BA back at the University of Illinois. I got accepted into the history program here. And they didn't offer me anything, right? They didn't offer me any financial aid. They didn't even offer me an out-of-state tuition waiver, right? And keep in mind, this is 1992, right? This is the 500th year of the invasion of this hemisphere, right? And we were doing all this organizing. And so I kept calling the secretary. She hated me. I kept calling her saying, hey, so, can I get a scholarship? No, we don't. Well, I said, well, how many Chicanos have you are in this entering class? 2. I said, okay, so 2 plus me, so 3. Well, no, you and another guy. And so I kept at it. And then I said, I can't go to Berkeley. And then one day I get a call. Hello, this is Carlos Muñoz. Is this Jason speaking? And I said, yes. And he says, congratulations on your admission to Berkeley. I hear that you're having some troubles getting a fellowship or something to come here. I said, yeah, I don't know, Carlos. And I'm freaking out because I've read his Youth Identity and Power, right? And he says, well, let me tell you, I'll offer you a research assistant position. Will that help? I said, yeah, it'll help. And I was totally like, I'll take it. He says, but let me tell you what, let me call you back. We'll see what can happen. Like a couple of days later, I don't know if you remember this. A couple of days later, I get a call from another legend that was here at the time, Margarita Melville. And Margarita, you know, she had done work in Guatemala. She was one of the Cantonville Nine. She also was an activist, right? But I guess by that point, she'd become a dean. And she says, so I was talking to Carlos. And Carlos says that you really want to come to Berkeley and that the history department's not offering you anything. Would you like the Graduate Opportunity Fellowship, which is a 2-year full ride? I said, click, I'm coming to California, you know? And I'm working with Carlos. And I came. And, you know, I was his research assistant. And we worked on an Ernesto Galarza project. He had me going through the Ernesto Galarza papers. And I don't know if people know who Ernesto Galarza is, another legend in Chicano history. I was going through his FBI files, right? And it's occurred to me that there's a lot of connections between Carlos and Ernesto, right? He was a mentor of yours. They also both had huge FBI files, I'm sure. But if you look at the subtitle, I mean, just to make the connection, the subtitle of Carlos's memoir is From Barrio Boy to Revolutionary and Scholar. And of course, Ernesto's memoir is Barrio Boy, right? But there's the most important parallel is that they were both activists in the struggle for social change, for social justice. Yet where Galarza left, I remember you sharing this with me, claiming that academia was a graveyard, Carlos stayed in the trenches, building a field that might transform the world and not simply reinterpret it in various ways. And he did so in ways that always remained committed to the needs of the community, to the highest principles of the movement that he was a part of. He's always been student-centered. People have talked about that already, both academically and also personally. I will never forget this young Chicano from Chicago, didn't know anybody out here on the West Coast. You know, I come out here, people are like, there's Chicanos in Chicago? Yes. And Carlos invited me into his home on Thanksgiving, right? Marcelo was there, you know, much younger than he is today. We're all getting a little bit older. But he took me into his home. This is what Carlos was about, right? Very student-centered. Carlos has always been grounded in social struggle, both on campus and off campus. I remember in the early 1990s, in that particular moment, the left was going through, the global left, but particularly the left here in the US, was going through all kinds of transformations. And Carlos was one of the only prominent Chicano left voices out there, right? Him, Betito Martinez. You know, I remember in the early 90s, we came together to form something called the Institute for Multiracial Justice, dedicated to improving relationships between communities of color, right? Born out of another earlier moment of third worldism. He wrote in Crossroads Magazine, another publication of that moment. But the other thing I want to say is that Carlos was always, this might sound funny, or I don't know, remained human. I highlight this because of how important it is and yet how challenging it seems to be. Academia is a notoriously toxic, competitive, cutthroat, I could go on and on, nasty place. Yet Carlos has always remained positive. As I sat here thinking about I tried to think to myself, have I ever heard Carlos be negative? No. I've never heard him be negative. You know, never participated in academic backbiting, never talking, professional shit talking, even when it was directed at him. The man has integrity, always has. And he taught me that one can maintain one's praxis, one's humanity, without falling prey to the logic of the institution. And as I was writing this, I was like, I gotta say this. To the bureaucrats. Because like his grandfather, Calixto Contreras, whom Zapata himself asserted would never betray the Mexican Revolution, so too with Carlos. Will never betray the revolution. As such, we need this archival collection. We need more Carlos Muñozes. Actually, we have them, right? We have them. The poets, the young folk, we have them. But we need more of them. And so, he remains my role model. We walk in his shoes. His book, Youth Identity and Power, remains a classic. It's a text much like, and I too want to invoke the legendary Robert Allen, whose book, Black Awakening in Capitalist America. Both of these texts together are sharp, important, analytic histories written by someone inside the struggle, seeking to tackle strategic movement questions, movement obstacles, as much as just simply share historical facts. Testament to the pioneering role of Carlos. I'm working, I started in my dissertation, now I'm still working on this book on the Third World Strike at State, and I finally, after God knows how many years, got through the FOIA requests, FBI files on the TWLF. What do I see on the first page? FOIA, in the mid-1980s, Mr. Carlos Muñoz. I should have just gone to these archives. They're probably in the archives. But it's testament to the historian that he is, right? And the shoes that we, as I say, we walk in. He was there 40 years earlier. So by way of conclusion, I'm gonna wrap up. I just want to share, I was a longtime TA for Carlos, and Carlos would drop lots of pearls along the way. And I want to speak to 3 of them really quickly, because I think they're words, it's wisdom for us to hold dear. One, Carlos would famously always say that we have to have an audacity, right? When he would talk about the movements. And what is he saying? What is he imparting? That we have to become the authors of our own transformation, to become subjects of history, to build our capacities. We live in a world where we are encouraged to be nothing more than objects, but that we can have the audacity to push back, to dream, as the poets here talked about, and to be different, to live differently. The other one is we are not islands unto ourselves. To recognize our interconnectedness and our interdependence. We need each other. And finally, the title of his book, Victory is in the Struggle. And I'll close with this because I think there's 3, I was meditating on this today and I was thinking to myself, what does that mean? Victory is in the struggle. And I can think of 3 things that really are born out of Carlos's example, that I'm sure is in the archives. The first is the transformative nature of the struggle itself, right? That we change as we change the world, right? Very important lesson. The second is that there is no end point. Revolution is not an event. Revolution is a process. Of course, the compañeros in Cuba, the compañeros in Venezuela, they always use the word, el proceso, right? That it's an ongoing process. And this too, I think, is an important piece of wisdom. And then finally, victory is in the struggle. It's in the collective nature. Victory resides in the communities that we build, in the comrades that we struggle alongside, and this too is a gift. And so it is a gift to be able to say that I've walked with you, I've struggled with you, I consider you a friend and a comrade.
Dang, Jason, that's what being unprepared looks like. I'm like, I gotta step my game up, All right, so we want to keep it moving. I want to invite the second speaker, Dr. Harvey Dong. Our second speaker, Dr. Dong, teaches ethnic studies courses as a lecturer in ethnic studies and Asian American and Asian diaspora studies here at UC Berkeley. Initially, Dr. Dong took part in the 1969 Civil Liberation Front, a student movement to establish ethnic studies. I think one thing that really stood out in the context of Profe's archives is just the constant work of preserving the history of the TWLF. I think one thing that stood out when we've had these conversations before in terms of when you came here in 1976, you understood your project as like helping to build the Civil College, right? Even as an incomplete process, that was part of the work, right? So with that said, I want to invite Harvey up to the stage.
Yeah, after listening to Jason's speech about how Carlos intentionally recruited him, I kind of think that Carlos also tried to recruit me, or intentionally. Because what had happened was I had participated in the Thermal Liberation Front strike, and our goal was we wanted a college, Third College. We didn't fulfill that goal, and it was always something in our dreams. And so when Carlos entered UC Berkeley, you thought you were gonna continue it, right? But you needed more people. Yeah. So what happened was about 30 years after the strike had ended, my wife, Beatrice, decided that she wanted to return to school. She had dropped out because she had a baby. And so she went back to UC Berkeley 30 years later. And I was the driver. I sat in the car outside, took naps while she was taking Carlos's classes. But I ended up speaking on the topic of the strike in the Asian American movement. And after that, I was encouraged by Carlos and Elaine there to share that experience, and write about the strike, write about the Asian American movement, the interconnections, the solidarity, the victories in the struggle, what does that mean? And so that's how I first met Carlos, speaking in his class, and he got up and said, "Oh, you got to come into our program." And then I met Jason, and we were both TAs in Carlos's class, and he taught a very explosive ethnic studies 41 AC civil rights movement in the United States, and it covered all the ethnic groups, Black, Asian, Chicano, and Native Americans. Lots of speakers. It was about over 200 people in the class. And every class, I remember people actually learned stuff and they applied it, Unfortunately, after Carlos retired, the class disappeared after a couple years, right? And it was never resuscitated, Do you think it was intentional? So I think we need more classes like that because people are interested about how the struggle is connected with American history. It's not something where it's just something, it just happened and it was just a fluke in history, but it was a part of the continuation of history, and I feel that Carlos made a tremendous contribution with regards to that. After he retired, he did give me his notes, and I did continue teaching that class for about 2 more years with the same ideas and stuff like that. Yeah. Myself, I'm still teaching ethnic studies, Asian American studies today, and I'm also the publisher of Eastwind Books. Eastwind Books of Berkeley actually operated as a store for like 27 plus years in Berkeley, but it shut down last year. But since then, we've been going into publishing, and one of the first books that we published was "Victory is in the Struggle" with Carlos. Yeah. So I actually learned a lot from that. I didn't. I know you used a lot of your life experiences in your lectures and stuff like that, but there were some things I thought really stood out about how you learned about the world and how you became an internationalist, especially about the time that you spent in Korea and how you witnessed the military dictatorship in South Korea and the resistance of South Koreans to U.S. imperialism. So I was, how myself I got into publishing was, I was a member of the ITU when it existed, International Typographers Union, somewhere between graduating from Berkeley and then going back to graduate school. So Carlos suggested or recommended, "Hey, I got this book idea. Are you interested?" I said, sure, and then he started writing the script, and then we kind of went over and over it. And Chella was instrumental in helping select and pick the photos. There's lots of photos about the history of the movement and Carlos's role in it. And so the book came out, was it last year? Yeah, last year, right? Yeah. And so for Carlos, I would say besides the book, he was instrumental in encouraging me to return to the graduate program, which became part of my academic journey. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be teaching here today still. This was a difficult step for me. This was actually during a very difficult time, especially with regards to the rise of neoconservatism, racism, and endless wars. His classes were a protective shelter to discuss politics, for students to discuss politics. It's important for all ethnic studies faculty to acknowledge and know the roots of how we got here, not just for the sake of it, but because when students take our classes, they are drawn to wanting to learn about race, class, gender, community, and decolonization. So definitely, I would say that like Jason was talking about how there's a gap right now. There's a memory gap in terms of the lessons of the movement aren't really connected today, and it needs to be shared. Yeah. Carlos' teaching personifies this. I ran into many individuals who took Ethnic Studies 41 AC Civil Rights in the US, and they all tell me that it changed their lives. Okay. The book provides many lessons from Carlos's life, and I hope that we can all take these lessons to heart. Okay, thank you.
Ooh, and for our third speaker, I want to invite Dr. Dick Walker to the stage. In terms of Dick Walker is a professor emeritus in geography here at UC Berkeley, but also Profe and Dick were part of a really important organization, the Faculty for Human Rights in Central America, in El Salvador and Central America, right? And I believe Dick Walker is going to speak a little bit to that.
Okay. Taking notes on my phone. Although I identify as one of the students that I have to give my identity. I identify as an old white guy. So, but I'm proud of it. Some of us have to hold up the banner of being old white guys and not being assholes, which is tough, but we manage. I love Carlos. I love being here to see Carlos and Chella and old friends. I'd like to see some of them that have disappeared, unfortunately, but this is just grand. I retired many years ago. I don't come on campus. I never come on campus. Much as I loved it when I was here, but you have to move on. So it takes something special to get me here, and Carlos is that. So, but I forgot my Panama. Yeah, I should have worn my Panama hat.
I can wear it to you right now.
Yeah. I used to wear that Panama. Maybe I got it from you. I don't know. Love the fact this exhibit. I really want to take time with it. Sorry, I kind of arrived a few minutes late. Looks wonderful. And of course, it points out, as people have already mentioned, the importance of archives, and not just archives, but libraries. I spent many a happy hour in this library. When I was trying to write a book on the history of racism in California, there was a fool's errand because it's too big. It was too big for me, but I sure learned a lot trying to do it. I also, you notice, I should have written this down on paper because I'm getting old and can't see my phone. But I have to say though, as an old prof, that just to the students, especially one student who said, well, I know I'm not the best writer. Yeah, you are. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a great writer already, if you weren't one of the best of the best. So, and I know that's the kind of Berkeley elitist thing, but frankly, there's some truth to it. So never, ever say, oh, the other students are smarter than me. The profs are smarter than me, because actually many of the students were smarter than any of us in every age. And they went on to be great, do great things. Carlos was one of my favorite colleagues on campus. I love ethnic studies, Afro-American studies at that time. I love that whole milieu. I was over in geography, a bit isolated. I had a couple of wonderful colleagues. We created a nice little island of sanity and leftism on campus, though mostly white. And so these were people from whom I learned so much, who were so stimulating, so different from your, frankly, frequently boring and tight-assed faculty colleagues. So this was a kind of liberated space. And it wasn't just for his students, but for other colleagues. So I love Carlos for that. I have to give a shout out to Mario Barrera, who I may have actually met before you. Absolutely wonderful scholar and wonderful man. David Matahano. Ron Takaki was one of my neighbors. We used to meet and talk. So these are such wonderful people in this faculty over here. And after that, many more who've come since then that I won't bore you with that. Thing about Carlos, he was feisty, but he was grounded. He was smart and scholarly, but also an activist and a leftist and outspoken. He could, by the way, one of his great talents, it wasn't mentioned, was he was a great rally speaker. Oh my God, you've probably heard him, but boy, could he rouse the crowd in a way I never could. No, he really had that. That's a talent, you know. Don't ever doubt that's a talent just as much as writing books. The 1980s, I'm going to go back to here, was a great time for me, I think for all of us. It was a great time of learning. We had come in, a bunch of lefties had snuck in to Cal. I came a year before Carlos. There were 4 of us who were up for tenure in 1982. We were the first ever openly declared Marxists to ever be given tenure on this campus, ever. And boy, was it a shitty process. But one of the things about struggle that somebody mentioned about that Carlos would know and that you've learned from Carlos is struggle teaches you. And so I ended up knowing more about how this university worked and its underside than most of my naive colleagues who just happily galloped through to tenure. They were the chosen children of their doting parents. They had gone to private schools. A lot of them had gone to the Ivy League. They're not public university people. I did go to Stanford, so forgive me. But they didn't have a clue how power worked in this university as a power institution. Let me tell you, both within and in its relationship to the outside world. I recommend, by the way, my friend Tony Platt's book, The Scandal of Cal, about some of the power relations that are built in to your campus and the naming and so on. Very educational. I used to give guided tours as a course in urban geography. We'd always start with the campus because there's so much here. Fantastic learning experience. If you're a student here, find out about your campus, and you will learn a lot about California and American history right off the bat. Okay, I met Carlos, I think, mostly through FACRES, which was faculty faculty for human rights in El Salvador. And then we added Central America, and it became the most ungainly acronym, FACRES-CA, which was really horrible. Shows that we have no political skills at all. But it was a wonderful group of both faculty, like Carlos and Margarita Melville was mentioned, the wonderful Praveen Varaya from engineering, Beatriz Mons, and then off-campus people, Esther Bauer, who was an old auto worker, an auto worker's wife and librarian, and Ned Pearlstein, who taught down at Laney. One absolutely glorious moment, and led by this really wild man, Arnon Hadar, who taught at Dominican College, who was a really left Israeli immigrant, and not too many of those left. But he was a wonderful guy who brought us all together. And we lasted almost a decade. And it was wonderful because I learned both through the activism. What did you do in those days? Well, you could hold rallies. We sent people on learning tours to Central America. We gathered signatures of faculty all over the country through telephone calls and letters to sign on to New York Times ads. And we did these giant ads in the New York Times. I hate the New York Times, but giant ads against the Contras and against Reagan's policy there. And, I think we did some good. I think we educated a lot of people about the horrors going on down there, and especially the role of the U.S. government in that. So it was a great moment. It was a learning moment for me. I started teaching California history and California race history at that time, and boy, was that an education. But meeting people like Carlos and Chela and learning from them is as important as anything I ever did looking in a book. So thank you for having me and letting me speak.
Ariel, to close up, I just want to invite Carlos to the stage.
I don't have the words to properly convey the love that I feel for each teacher and the love that I give to a lot of you that do know in the audience. Without your love, I will not be who I am. And I appreciate the life that I can have and the opportunity that I have had, to contribute modestly to changing the country and in many ways the world. The things that we did here in Berkeley, the small group of us on the left, made an impact everywhere, including South Africa, believe it or not. And folks in South Africa convey to us their love and respect for the work that we did here that passed the torch throughout the world of revolutionary change. And so I feel very, very, very happy that I had a part to play in that. And I'm 85 years old now, but I'm still a revolutionary. And I will die a revolutionary. But I know that my spirit will continue to live on in the hearts and minds of the young revolutionaries that are in the process of emerging on this campus, as well as throughout the world, with other institutions of higher learning. So I feel very much that I got the most incredible opportunity to contribute in a positive way to the making of revolutionaries in this country. So I will pass on to the spirit world, happily knowing that they will go on to continue our work for making revolutionary change a reality to our society and the world. So I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and convey to you in love that you know happiness and peace and justice in your lives. Thank you.
My name is Graciela Chelario Muñoz, and what's my name? We've been married 46 years, and what I want to speak to is revolutionary love has many aspects to it, and relationships, as in marriage, can be revolutionary love. As you raise a family and as we become, I feel like in a lot of ways, we became vanguards in terms of what a relationship can be and how you raise a family. And Carlos has been somebody who, it's hard to be committed and passionate the way he is and balance that out with family. It's not always easy to do. And one thing I can say is, he's all that. He's all that. And he's committed to our relationship, to our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandson. And when you can do all of that, you are all that.
All right, so I feel like if I say anything else, I just ruin it. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Please take a look at the exhibit. Folks, bring your students. I think also engage the archive, right? In terms of, we only scratch the surface in the context of how many boxes are there? Like too many. I mean, I think it's truly powerful. I'm kind of sad the research process is over, But I'll just end it there. I thank you so much for coming to. It's just beautiful to actually see all these people up here. And Profe, just thank you. Yes.